Thank you everyone for joining us in the Cloves monthly webinar. I'm Shruti Kumtekar, Marketing Manager at Cloves. This time we are going to talk about change management in Jakarta. Here's the agenda for our webinar today. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to go through housekeeping, talk a little about Cloves, who we are, followed by a presentation and demo on change management in Jakarta, and finally the Q&A. This webinar will be recorded, so if you miss something, you will be able to access it later. Q&A process, as I mentioned, the Q&A session is towards the end of the webinar. You are presently muted. If you have any questions, please use the questions or comments section in the GoToWebinar control panel. I will read them out loud. If you're running out of time, we will answer your questions offline. If you have any questions that are not directly related to the webinar, please email me at shruti@closing.com or sales@closing.com. If you want to know about latest updates from Cloves or you want to access some of our previous webinars, you can visit our Facebook page, LinkedIn page, as well as our YouTube channel. A little about Cloves. We have been a ServiceNow partner since 2011. We are based in Santa Clara, very close to the ServiceNow headquarters. We are a full ServiceNow shop with 150 plus customers and close to 50 consultants, and we have been executing projects globally. We offer several different services. Our focus this year, though, has been on customer service management, end user portals, and mostly HR under enterprise service management. With that, I'm going to pass control to Alex Carlson, technical consultant at Cloves. Alex will be giving us a presentation and demo, and in his efforts, he's going to be supported by Louis Cuvera, Omar Hamid, and Darlene Wolf. Thank you, panelists. All right, Alex, I'm going to pass presenter rights to you.
Thanks, Shruti, and thank you everyone for attending. Today we wanted to take some time to talk about change management in ServiceNow. It's one of those things that is used by a lot of organizations, but doesn't always get a lot of coverage. So there are some cool advances that kind of pushed change management forward in Jakarta that we thought merited some review. And specifically, I wanted to talk about the CAB dashboard. But just to give you kind of a quick overview of what the webinar is going to cover, we're going to do just kind of a quick overview on the process side of change in ServiceNow and what that entails. We'll do a quick review of some of the notable items from the Jakarta release notes for change, and then talk about the enhancements made to the eCAB experience. Finally, we have a small case study with one of our customers about how they were able to kind of customize and configure change to suit the needs of their business. And then finally, we'll end with some questions and answers. Now that being said, if anyone has a question as we're going through this, please feel free to jump in and go ahead and ask that question. And we want to keep this as interactive as possible. Okay, so jumping right into change management, the overall process objective with change is to understand the changes that are occurring to your IT infrastructure inside your organization with the goal of mitigating risks and preventing outages. So the idea is in the past and without a change management process in place, if you're a sysadmin or an owner of a certain area inside of IT, you may need to make certain types of changes. Some of them may be kind of routine things like upgrades. Some of them might just be, bringing in a new system, something that isn't exactly routine, but is expected and planned. And sometimes you'll have to make a change to a system or a configuration in the event of an unexpected outage or something like that. And so the goal of change management, right, is to kind of create a unified place to review this and ensure that there are processes in place at the organizational level that can review these changes and make sure that they're not colliding and make sure that, they're not causing any unnecessary issues. So I just want to start with a few kind of base definitions here. So a request for change or a change record inside of ServiceNow is going to be a record that holds all the details of a given change. So the idea is that you proactively submit some documentation to let everybody around you know, hey, this is what we're going to be doing, this is the date we're doing it, here's why we're doing it, and here's what we think the risk is. Kind of at a bare minimum, that's what you're going to want to capture inside of a change, to make sure that you're able to adequately assess the risk and plan properly. Then we have some different types of changes. So a comprehensive, did I double skip? No, okay, here we go. A comprehensive change is going to be a high risk or high impact change that's going to have a more complex procedure. So think of that as maybe you're changing a system, installing new software, things like that. Anything that's going to be a little bit more unpredictable and more involved to do. You're going to want to utilize kind of a collaborative approach to this, and that's where the CAB, the Change Advisory Board, comes in to kind of make sure that you have some oversight on that change and that you're not catching people out of the blue when you're making those types of changes. This would be in contrast to something like a routine change. So a routine change is going to be more of like a low risk change. That might be a software patch or an upgrade, something that you're going to be doing regularly that's repeatable, and that you kind of understand all the parts of that before you go into it. Depending on your organization and how you want to set that up, that may be something that you want to involve more people in approving and understanding. But a lot of the times, it just makes sense to give that autonomy to the person or group that's going to be responsible for those changes on a regular basis. And then finally, what we have are emergency changes. So these are things where, the change is almost a retroactive thing. Something's gone down, something's broken, and you need to go in and make changes to a system in order to correct that change and kind of restore functionality and operation to the business. So in those types of situations, you're going to go ahead and skip most of the change management process, because the emphasis is on, the goal of having a change management process to begin with, right, is to prevent outages and to prevent degradations or disruptions in service. So if you're going in to remedy that type of situation, then, it kind of precludes the need to have that kind of oversight, because you just need to get it done and get it done quickly. So finally, we have the Change Advisory Board, and this is kind of the crux of the whole change management process, right? Is you need a set group of people who are able to understand across your organization what kind of changes are going on and what the impacts of those changes are. Because if you're, one administrator or one person who's in the system making a change, you may not be aware of the overall, high-level organizational impact of that change. And so the idea behind creating a change advisory board is to have a group of people who can kind of shoulder that responsibility and look at your change, not just on its own merits, but in the context of other changes as well. With the goal of preventing downtime, preventing disruption in service, and preventing chaos with maintenance windows and things like that. So just to give you kind of a quick overview, and again, a lot of this is going to be review, but I just kind of wanted to take a few minutes here to establish a baseline for what we're talking about when we talk about change, just so that we're all on the same page. So when you look at the overall change management process, you're going to start with defining the change. So you're going to put together, information on what you need to do and how you plan to do it. So that would be logging the process and the change plans. After that, you enter the phase of assessment and evaluation. So that's when you look at what you've created critically and you say, okay, here are the legitimate risks that could result from making a change like this. And by risk, we're talking about risks like outages, loss of data, loss of access, anything that would cause a disruption of normal business services, as well as conflicts. Am I making this change at the same time as somebody else's, or is my change going to conflict and cause an unexpected output in light of what somebody else may be doing at the same time? After that, you start getting into the planning phase, which is kind of breaking down how exactly you're going to go about doing the change. If it's a big complex change, you may need to kind of map it out with a project. If you're overhauling a system, you may have multiple changes that are required to get where you need to be. And so you can track the overall project using the project portfolio component of ServiceNow. You also need to work on scheduling the change. And so again, that's where the CAB comes in with preventing conflicts and overlapping maintenance windows and things like that. Once you have kind of the base information on the change as far as what you need to do, what kind of risks it poses, and how it exists within the concept of your greater plan, then we go into the approval phase. So you'll probably want to get at least one approval, probably a technical approval from someone who can understand what's going on at a technical level and say, yeah, that makes sense, we need that, or maybe not. And that's also where you get the CAB involved, because if their goal is to track changes throughout the organization, they need to be aware of the change that's going on. And then finally, we're in the closing phase of the change, which is actually completing the change, doing the thing that you said you'd do when you created the change, and validating, that it works, as well as logging that information so that if down the road there's a problem with what you may have done, you can go back and look at that and hopefully quickly troubleshoot the issue, because you've logged on a somewhat detailed level all of the work that you did in order to put that change into place. So with that said, let's take a look at what's new in Jakarta. The first thing, and a lot of this is pulled from the change log for the Jakarta release and the change management module. I would encourage anyone who's interested in that to look at the ServiceNow docs page. The transition from the wiki to the docs page has been a little bit arduous, but it's really coming together now, and there's some good information there. You can quickly generate PDFs and things like that too of the information you're interested in, and spit those out to save for reference. I kind of went through that. There's more items than this, obviously, but I kind of aggregated based on things that went together. So ServiceNow with Jakarta started creating these best practice plugins. They're not enabled on current instances, so if you're doing an upgrade, you probably won't see this. But if you're a new customer in ServiceNow, then these plugins will be activated and kind of work like guardrails to help make sure that you're kind of keeping in line with the best practices that ServiceNow has pulled both from ITIL and from its current customers. They added a related list on the change form to track outages as well. So if a change caused an outage or is being created to remedy an outage, it's easier to build that link inside of ServiceNow. There's updated notifications as far as when they send and when they go out for different types of things. The approval notifications have been changed a little bit. There's a new out-of-box report that covers outages. They made some overall changes to the form layout. They added a related list for task SLAs. The other thing they did is now when you're going through the list view of changes, or maybe you're looking at a change as a related record on a different type of form, when you hover over that little info icon, with the square, and that little pop-up comes up, they've adjusted the fields on that pop-up to show, kind of more of the information that most people are looking for. They've kind of tweaked it to make it a little bit more relevant. One of the other larger behind-the-scenes changes that they made in Jakarta was this two-step standard change. So the idea is that you can request a change from the service catalog, and it actually kind of goes through two approval processes. The first one, so maybe you're an end user, you're not necessarily like a technical admin or something like that, but you need you need to have something upgraded, or you need to have some kind of change done on the system. You now have the ability to request that through the service catalog, and it kind of has two validation phases. The first one is it's going to go to an admin or somebody with the kind of technical knowledge that would probably be executing that change, and they can first do an initial pass to approve or reject that. Say, yeah, that's valid, or you know what, no, we're not really comfortable doing that. Once they've made that determination, it's then promoted to go through the rest of the change management process. So you can kind of pre-vet stuff before it just gets put into the change management queue. They also went ahead and added the approval history directly to the activity log, which is kind of nice. If you're looking to say, hey, who approved this change, it's now easy to find. You don't necessarily need to look at the approval related list. It's just right there in the activity log. They added a different type of change too, an implementation type change, and made some changes to the mandatory fields. But the big kind of item that I wanted to focus on for today's webinar would be the kind of enhanced ECAB experience. This is something that was created for the Istanbul release, but was really kind of fine-tuned in Jakarta. And it's essentially a dashboard for managing, your changes. So you can run your change management meetings or your change advisory board meetings, kind of using this dashboard to keep things on track and have everything in one place. So I'd like to demo this for you and quickly showing you. I'll give you a quick overview of what that looks like. I'll go through setting up a new one, and then kind of running a demo meeting to show you how that works. So let me go ahead and end this presentation here for a second. So if we look here under the change form, or the change module in the left-hand side. There's this new section in here for Change Advisory Board, and you can click on the CAB workbench. And what that's going to go ahead and do is actually show you all of your scheduled CAB meetings. So different organizations like to do things differently, and I think it kind of depends on the size of your organization and how you're structured. One idea is to just have kind of a master change advisory board where every sub-department, whether you're on the networking team or the systems team, all of your changes go through there so that you have kind of one level of oversight. If you're a larger company or have more distinct separation of duties, then it may be beneficial to have multiple change advisory meetings to make sure that there's the people who are looking at these changes and approving them are fully understanding of how that change works and have the technical knowledge to back up that kind of decision-making process. If we look here, I'll go back to a past meeting just to kind of show you what it looks like. So you can define on the left-hand side here, there's a few parameters you can define. You can define the length of the meeting, the time roughly that you'll be spending on each agenda item, and this is to kind of help push the meeting forward and make sure that these meetings are as efficient and productive as possible. You also then have the ability to define what kind of changes are going to be pulled into this CAB workbench. And then what ServiceNow will do is it'll automatically generate these meetings going out and just kind of create a rolling meeting. You have the ability to capture meeting notes if you'd like. This is a past meeting, so I can't enter them anymore, but I'll do a demo in a few minutes of how that would work on a current meeting. And then of course you have list of attendees and conference bridge information. So if you're not having it in the physical room, really this is a free-form field. So if you had a conference room booked, you could use that. If you had a dial-in, you could use that as well. You can basically move through the left-hand side here, assign notifications, and then view the details of the change. And depending on the role that you have, in this case, I'm just using the default sysadmin account. I have ITIL access, but I'm not a particularly privileged user in the change management process. So this is kind of the generic ITIL view. So anybody who's there can follow along, whereas the change manager would have control of the meeting and the ability to approve and promote things. So now that we've done a quick overview of kind of what this is and how it works, I'll go through a little bit of information on how to get this set up. So, out of the box, this is just some demo data that ServiceNow included, the network CAB. If you wanted to create your own CAB, though, what you need to do is you need to go to the CAB definition section. From there, you can create a new one by clicking on the new button, and it's going to ask you for some basic information. So we're going to call this the systems CAB. We have a systems group in this instance, and the manager for this group is Beth Anglin. So we'll go ahead and put that in. Now here's where we could put in some conference details as well as the length of the meeting. So in this case, we'll change this to a 60-minute meeting. And we'll go ahead and put our details in here. Not just a GoToMeeting link. So you can set different types of CABs. You could have an emergency type CAB, maybe have them meet on a monthly or quarterly basis just to review any emergency changes that were made and help to refine those processes. But for now, we're just going to stick with the normal CAB. You may also have location-specific ones, so you could adjust that information in here. Now, the other thing you can do is set the time per agenda item. In this case, we don't have a lot of stuff. We'll do 10 minutes per agenda item. This doesn't really have any consequences per se. You can take as much time as you need. It's your meeting, but if you've got 100+ changes to go over, it can just kind of help you keep yourself on track, and it'll just give you a little timer and say, hey, this is kind of where you're at on this agenda item, and keep that in mind as you move forward. Now, the last thing that's going to be kind of important on here, this is probably the single most important part other than defining who's going to be in this meeting, is what kind of changes are going to be in this meeting. So for the change request conditions, in this case, because we're doing the systems CAB, we're going to want to make sure that we only have those types of changes in here. So if we set an assignment group is IT systems, that's going to basically say, look, when you're running the query on the change table, make sure you're only pulling in changes that have the IT systems assignment group. So with this information filled in, we can go ahead and submit the CAB record. And then if we drill into this tab, it's going to warn us that we don't have a schedule. Now, schedules are really important because that's what allows us to generate the meetings. You can generate an ad hoc meeting by going to the meetings tab here and creating a new one. But if you're trying to have this as a regular process, which is what it really should be, then you're going to want to schedule it. So you can click new on there to create a new schedule. So it's going to ask you for a name and a type. It'll set you as busy and set the ServiceNow chat when you're in this meeting. So because we defined a 60-minute window, it automatically, when I put in the time for our meeting, it pushed it out by an hour. If you had a different time, it would automatically do that. And then what you're going to want to do is probably set a repeat schedule. So there's different types of repeat options. If you've used Outlook or something, you're familiar with this. We're just going to do a weekly meeting every Tuesday. And let's see. It's actually, we're in Pacific time, but I'm in Mountain time. So yeah, that should probably be 10:30 to 11:30. And you can set a repeat until date if you think these are going to be phased out. If you leave this blank, then it's just going to generate them forever. So now that we've created our schedule, we'd expect to see meetings here. And this actually threw me out the first time I used this. What you need to do is once you've created your schedule, you need to click this related link to refresh your CAB meeting. And that's going to go ahead and generate the first set of meetings. So, we have them all the way basically through the end of December. So if we look at this meeting here, and this is something that would probably be handled by your change manager, it's copied over all the common information. Again, if you wanted to, for a specific meeting, include different types of changes, you could. You can also determine, what the windows are, but it's going to auto-generate your windows basically to cover the intervals between your meetings. So this one's covering change requests starting after, immediately after the meeting at 11:30, and going to all the way to the same time the day before the next meeting, which is November 7th. But you'll see again, there's no agenda items. Agenda items in this case would be change requests. So what we need to do is we need to click the refresh agenda items link. And it'll automatically send out new meeting invites. So now we can see there's some demo data in here that I loaded in earlier. So this is going to go ahead and preload any types of changes that you have. In testing, I had marked this one as approved, but I'm going to mark it back just so we have a different set of a few different types of changes to look at here. So now what we can do is we can go to this meeting in the CAB workbench. But the other thing to keep in mind now is if we go to the CAB workbench here, it's going to bring up the calendar, and you'll now see the systems CAB that we created on that calendar, going into November and then also into December. It hasn't generated for January yet, so you'll periodically just need to go in there and have it refresh the meetings. And so now if we, let's see here. So here's that CAB meeting that we created. So it shows you your changes on the left and kind of the same deal. But what I need to do, I'm going to go ahead and impersonate Beth Anglin here, because she's going to be the change manager, which means she'll be running this meeting. So you can see now that I'm impersonating Beth, I can actually go ahead and start the meeting. And that's going to go ahead and kick this item off here. So, we can look at our first change here, and it's going to go ahead and pull in all the details on that change, as well as the planning info. In this case, it's just a test change. This is all blank. Some of these other ones have kind of more detailed information here, as well as the change schedule. And you can also look at it on a calendar this way as well to see when this change is coming through. See, there's the one change, and there's the next. So you can kind of create a unified change calendar, which is one thing that we see a lot of our customers asking for. is it's great to be able to see information on changes, but how do we see them in relationship, in relation to others? So once we look at all this information here and we're comfortable with how this looks, we can go ahead and approve the change. Approvals is another thing. There's kind of two schools of thought on this. One is, when you submit this change form, you're going to have a predefined list of approvers in here. Because this change is already approved, we don't need to approve it, and I'll show you on a different one. So one idea would be, you have your meeting and you can go ahead and add a note in this change or promote this change, basically saying, yeah, this has been approved by the CAB. And then you can have, in this case, Kristen come in and actually approve the change. The alternative way to do this, that I think honestly is a bit more common in practice, is to allow the change manager to kind of approve changes on behalf of the people in charge. So that's not to say that Beth replaces them in the approval process, but it's more that they're having this meeting together, they're all in the same conference call, they're involved. So Chris will say, hey, yeah, go ahead and approve that, and then Beth can execute that approval on his behalf. It's not giving Beth the authority to make that decision on her own, but it's more giving her the authority to assert the will of the committee on their behalf. So here we have the ability to promote a change as well. So we can kind of continue to go through here. And with this one, Beth, because she's an approval admin, could go into these approvals here. Let's see. And set that to approved. And in the case of this change, sometimes they're set so that you just need one person in the group. Yeah, here we go. If we reload this form, I don't want to spend too much time on approvals, but basically, you could be, once you promoted it, it was approved on behalf of the group, and now it needs to go to the team that's actually in charge of making that call, so she can process another approval here. And that's going to mark these all as no longer required. So at this point, this change has been approved and this data is now scheduled. It's ready to go. And you can kind of just continue to roll through the rest of these. And once you've done that, you've kind of processed your changes for the week. You've approved or rejected them. And then the people who are in charge of actually executing those changes and bringing them through to completion can go ahead and go about their task of doing that. So at this point, I do want to just do a quick pause. I know we'll have a Q&A at the end, but are there any questions coming in here?
Yes, Alex, we do have a few questions actually. Do you want me to go ahead and read them out?
Yeah, if there's any pertaining to the CAB workbench, before I move away from that, it might be easier to just answer those while we have it pulled up.
Okay, so there's one question here that, so does that imply the CAB members be technical? Our assessment has been that CAB can exist as members that aren't even in IT or have much technical acumen.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I understood the first part of that question. Was it within ServiceNow, can you include those people, or is it more on like a process side of should you include non-technical people in your CAB?
I think they're asking in general whether CAB members need to be technical, or even if they are, that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think you do. They simply need to have access and understand how ServiceNow works. But in general, CAB members doesn't necessarily need technical acumen.
Okay.
I think it's good to have a mixture of both in there, because your technical people might be able to speak to the technical portion of the change, but depending on how your organization is structured, you may need people who aren't technical but are more familiar with what the strategic needs and goals are of the organization. So having a mixture of both, I think, is a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Another question was, can the out-of-the-box outage report be configured to send to a notification list?
Sure, yeah. You would need to, under the scheduled report settings, you can specify an email list or an individual user or a contact group inside of ServiceNow. The same rules for traditional reports would apply to the outage report as well.
Okay, thank you. Can CAB report be created by change approver group or multiple groups?
The outage report?
It just says CAB report.
It's your CAB definition. The answer is yes. It does not necessarily mean change manager. It could be set by individual groups.
Okay, so we have a few more CAB related questions. Would email invites be sent to CAB attendees so that they can add to their individual calendars?
Yes. I don't know if you saw when I was setting it up, but it did say, when you add a new agenda item in there, or when you generate the list of agenda items, it prompted me to resend notifications because it will include some details on the items that'll be in that CAB. But yeah, those emails will get sent out. That's going to happen through ServiceNow. So anyone that I specify, let me pull up the CAB definition again. In this case, it's going to be anyone in this group, the IT systems group, but you can also add members and delegates in here, and they'd be receiving emails on that.
Okay. Another question, can you change the details that show, like the overall risk calculation?
Yes. Are you talking about adding like a custom risk calculation, or are you talking about, pardon me, what shows on here? Because this is just pulling directly from the form. So you'll need to modify your change form if you want to do that. But we do have a case study coming up where we actually do that. The out-of-the-box risk calculations weren't quite adequate for what the customer is trying to accomplish, so we made new ones.
Reporting on CAB from the CAB workbench, is this customizable?
Yeah, I mean, all elements of reporting in ServiceNow are customizable. So yeah, you can write custom reports that just report off the change table to cover what you would need.
Okay, next question. What is really different between the eCAB we just walked through and what is currently available?
Sure. Louis, I know, do you remember the specifics on that? I can pull up the release notes.
No, we don't need to. It's the new difference is the this form settings, the CAB workbench, where it allows you to look at the and view the actual change request, change record itself. In prior version, it did allow you to only see from a workbench calendar standpoint, but not as robust as what you currently see today with this page that Alex is showing.
Yeah, the meeting controls are a lot tighter. The UI is just cleaner, and it's just kind of a more refined experience overall. It was a great introduction in Istanbul, but I think they just had the extra time from the Istanbul release into Jakarta to refine it in a few key areas. But thanks for the coming on the specifics, Louis.
Okay, so we have another 3 or 4 questions. Do you want to quickly go through those before you jump into the next section, Alex?
Yeah, I think we're doing okay on time. So yeah, that's no problem at all.
Okay, great. Previously, there was an approve or reject button in the change tile on the left-hand navigator. Do you now have to open the change to approve it?
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Today, from this view of this workbench, in order to approve reject from the CAB workbench, you would need to edit, which is that pencil mark icon there, which opens up the actual change record, and then approve it from that standpoint. The approve reject is the widget that allows an actual approver from a self-service standpoint to be able to approve and reject, but not in this fashion of where it has more details. So it's a little bit two different views from an approval widget standpoint versus the CAB workbench widget standpoint, and that might be a future potential, upgrade that they could make. But we see it as that you do need to go in from a CAB standpoint, that you do need to go into the system and approve it from this list. Otherwise, each CAB member who has access and who's able to approve through the portal will still have that widget available based on their portal settings.
Thank you. Next question. When you set up the CAB meetings and include attendees, can it send an Outlook meeting request?
I believe we answered that earlier, and yes, it will. It can send an Outlook calendar. If it can send emails, but it can also, we can configure it as such where it can also send a calendar invite.
Okay. Is there an ability to have a group of approvers whereby all must approve as opposed to just one member approving?
Yes. Out of the box, the workflow allows you to modify the way approvals work, whether that is an individual approver or a set of groups of approvers where you may only require one approver or two approvers or all of the approvers. That is configured and as part of out of the box workflow approval functionality.
Okay. Is the call setup integrated with a specific conferencing tool, or can it be integrated with WebEx or Skype?
It can be done with whatever you'd like. That's actually, it's just a free-form text field in there. Let me pull that up again.
Yeah, out of the box, it only allows you to populate the conference information as if you were setting it up from a just the body of the email. But there, I'm pretty fairly sure we can configure and integrate it with other tools.
Okay. Can you make fields mandatory, such as planned dates?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be done. That would be a modification made to the change form itself, other than the CAB. But yeah, you absolutely can. And the other thing to consider, which I'll also demo in the next bit that I have for you, is that depending on the type of change, you may want to make certain fields mandatory or not, and you can do that as well. You can have, whether or not a field's mandatory, as well as even the field visibility, affected by what type of change you have. So if it's an emergency change, you may want to strip out a lot of fields because you just need to get the problem solved. Whereas if it's more of like a planned comprehensive change, you're going to want to take in as much information up front as possible. Real quick, just to backtrack, this is where you can put in the conference details. So you have basically a full editor here. If you have a WebEx or Skype, you can put that in here. I just put in a demo GoToMeeting link. If you had multiple ways to connect, you could put in a conference call phone number. And if you had a physical location, like a conference room booked, you could put in the location of the meeting there.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, one other thing I just wanted to show. Here is the email that goes out. So it's going to fire off this email here. I think it's using a mail script, so the preview HTML body won't pull anything up here, but essentially it basically says that your attendance has been requested at the specified CAB meeting, and you'll be expected to discuss the following change requests, and then it'll provide a list of the change requests that are in place. And so by modifying this here, we could very easily do something like add an Outlook calendar invite. We could even pull in, because you're tracking in the CAB definition here, the meeting link and things like that, you could format it so that it automatically sends you an invitation with all that data, pre-filled.
Okay, great. Can the CAB calendar display all changes forward or just approved changes?
No, I mean,
it can set up calendars where it can. The calendars are configurable to be able to show all changes or approved or non-approved changes. It's just more of a configuration from a reporting standpoint.
Okay, so we are getting a bunch of questions. How are we doing on time, Alex?
If it's all right, because I think it may answer some of those questions, I'd like to proceed to the next part and then devote the remaining time to answering those questions. And if anyone has extra questions, I can go over, or you can shoot one of us an email directly. But let me quickly show you, because we got some questions here. For the calendar of changes, you can either do it through the CAB workbench, which you would just need the link to view the CAB workbench. I think you need an ITIL role to see that. Alternatively, you can do a report. There's a new calendar type of report, so you could do it that way, and you could set that to auto email out, or to just be a continuous report and embed in a dashboard, or even embed it on the service portal.
Okay. Another one, will it continue to have normal features in normal view not on the service portal like approve or reject? Or is it removed from classic view also?
No, so when you're creating a
No,
change record, or Louis, did you wanna, was that
no, go
Louis?
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the cab is like an additional page and an additional layer that sits on top of the underlying change record. But those changes that we were looking at inside the cab, if we go to change in here, let's see, any of these have the ability to go through. This was a poor choice because it's an emergency change, but let's look at this one here. This is going to generate an approval record, and you would view that approval record just for the same way you would for anything else. So no, you're not opting out of a traditional view. If you were going to do that, if we click on the approval here in this case, you still have that approve and reject button.
Okay. How do you add additional attendees that are not CAB members but need to represent their CRs?
Yeah, so on the individual meeting record, go to CAB workbench. It's actually not what we want. We want CAB definitions, sorry. If we go to the CAB definitions and then go to the systems CAB, you can see there's all these meetings here. In an individual meeting, you could go ahead and add an additional person right through here. And that would only apply to this one meeting, whereas the other ones would retain whatever data you set in the schedule.
Okay. If you have attendees to the CAB that are designated but don't have ITIL access, how would that work?
I think you would have to configure the system to do so. Out of the box, it does require ITIL, but
there's a solution, yeah, but I think it's going to require a little bit of custom work.
Okay. Are change tasks required or recommended?
Change tasks?
Mm-hmm.
They're not required, and they may be recommended, I think, depending on how you do your change, right? Sometimes you can, I think if you're going to have more than one person being responsible for a change and you have different people with different parts that they need to play, then I think a change task is a very useful tool because you can just shoot off that one individual task to the one person that needs to do that one part, and then the person who's responsible for the overall change can hold on to the overall change record. If you are one person who's going to be responsible for all elements of a given change, then I don't think you really need to deal with change tasks. It's just kind of an additional overhead that you're going to need to manage. So it really comes down to how you work your change process and how many people are going to be involved. Louis or Darla or Omar, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I agree with you, Alex. At the end of the day, we shouldn't have to create extra work for for the fulfillers of the change, especially given the highly technical things that they are doing. We want to make sure that the critical parts of the change, such as post-implementation testing, is the one they're focusing on. Unless obviously there are different, like what you said, different parts of the change that will need to be orchestrated with other departments.
Okay, great. The next one, we're looking for a master IT calendar, wondering if this change calendar can be configured to include scheduled projects and scheduled maintenance windows, as well as scheduled changes.
Yeah, you're going to probably want to create a new report of a calendar type, and you're going to probably want to run that off the task table. And that way you can include changes, you can include projects, things like that, anything that's a child of the task table.
I just want to add to that. There is a maintenance blackout windows calendar that used to be available before. I believe that's still available, where it shows all of not only the blackout windows, the CAB calendar, the CAB workbench also will allow you to show the blackout window and schedule window. So you can use a lot of, there's different methods to show a master calendar.
Okay, so those are mostly the questions that I have so far. But if you have a few minutes, there was a request from one person to go over the approval process in the CAB workbench again. So do you think this is something we could quickly do, Alex?
Yeah, let's take a look here. Let's not use the network cab because that meeting's not, well, maybe we can. Let's see.
I think you pull up a record, Alex, and then
Yeah. Let's go back here. Look at the cab calendar. Drop into the systems cab. This one I'm more familiar with because I built it. And let me also quickly change back to Beth Anglin. She's the change manager. So basically here, just to kind of show you what that timer where you set the 10 minutes per item, I know this isn't directly, but that's where it shows up here. So it's fairly unobtrusive, but it does let you know, hey, you're kind of going over if you're trying to keep this meeting on track. Right, so if you wanted to, let's find one that hasn't already been approved. We look at this one here. There's the pencil icon. Now the pencil icon will let you make changes to the change form here. And this one's also been approved. But you would just go down to the approvers section and you can modify the approval here to set it to approved. I know what someone mentioned the ability to add the approval, like there was just an approve button right here. And I know that was available in previous ones. I'm not sure what happened to it, to be perfectly honest. In playing with some different roles and different permission types for various users, I was unable to make that button come back. So I think it's safe to assume that it may have been removed. But yeah, you would basically do that through the pencil icon here down to the bottom, and you can adjust the state to approved through here. Or depending on on the change form, there's a field in here for approval. If you didn't want to modify a specific person's approval, you could just modify it to approved directly through the form if that field was enabled. Did that cover what you were looking to go through, or did you have more questions about kind of configuring approval workflows and things like that?
Yeah, I believe it covered like an overview, so I think that's good. One last question, I think, before we end the webinar. Is the CAP meeting module available in the Jakarta version?
Yeah, yep, it's included in the change management module. You don't need to activate anything else.
Okay. All right, so thank you all attendees for joining us for the webinar. If you have any more questions, please email us at sales@closing.com or Shruti, SHRUTI, @closing.com. And thank you, Alex, Louis, Omar, and Darla for being our panelists for today. And see you all next month for the next webinar.
Thanks everybody for attending, and thanks everyone for Louis, Darla, and Omar for helping with the Q&A.